Good morning and welcome to the Morning Scoop for Friday, November 26th. This is your daily Buckeye fix. I'm Tom Orr. The game against Michigan is tomorrow. We are closer than we've ever been in the history of this show. That's pretty exciting. Ohio State is still a pretty comfortable favorite heading into tomorrow's game in Ann Arbor. And we have spent a lot of time this week on various shows discussing why the Buckeyes are likely going to beat Michigan for the record ninth straight time and the 16th time in 17 tries. But it is still absolutely possible that the Wolverines could win. They are, after all, ranked fifth in the nation, which is generally something that correlates pretty well to being a pretty darn good team. And if they are going to win it, there are a few very specific things that could lead to that happening. So we're going to take a look at some of those things today. My guest today is Buckeye Scoop's Tony Gerdeman. Tony, are you ready to make a bunch of folks across the state of Ohio just a little bit anxious on this lovely Black Friday?
That's why I came here.
This is what we do. Make everyone a little more anxiety ridden. That's what this week is all about. So I guess let's start with all week when we've been talking about it. It's like, what's the number one thing Ohio State has to do? They have to protect CJ Stroud. So I think obviously the number one thing we got to talk about here is if Michigan's getting pressure on CJ Stroud, that's not a good sign for Ohio State. Stroud has been sacked multiple times. He's been sacked twice in the game against Oregon, Tulsa, Akron, Nebraska, and Michigan State. Now, some of those, I didn't go back and look whether he was sacked twice against Akron. I suspect probably not. And then the Michigan State game, like that obviously did not have a big impact in the Michigan State game. But the other three of those games, Oregon, Tulsa, Nebraska, were games where Stroud looked a little bit uncomfortable at times. When you get pressure on him, he's not always going to look like he did against Michigan State. So to me, that's kind of question number one. If Michigan gets pressure on CJ Stroud, how does he respond?
Yeah, and do they get it right away? Everybody's going to be starting with nerves in this game. That's the only way to start this game. And then if they get after him right away, does that exacerbate the issue? Does that make him more erratic? And so, yeah, I think that is maybe above all else, the key is just getting his timing off, making him see rushes, because if he's looking at the rush, he's not looking downfield. And if he's, even if he's thinking there's a rush and there's not, if you get after him enough, maybe there's some residual effect to that. I go back to the Penn State game where Michigan had 7 sacks, but Penn State still nearly won that game. I think one of the reasons why is Michigan forced 2 fumbles on those 7 sacks. Penn State recovered them both. And so now if Michigan wins this one, you got to figure there's going to be some sacks, there's going to be some forced fumbles, and there has to be at least 1 recovery, maybe even 2, where you not only do you stop the Ohio State offense, but you get some field position out of it. You stop them immediately, get the ball back, do some things with it. But if there is no pressure on CJ Stroud, I don't know how else Michigan can really put forth the full complement of efforts that they need to against this Ohio State offense.
I mean, you go back to Ohio State's defensive scores this year. They've had a couple strip sacks. The one against Penn State that went for a touchdown. The one against Minnesota that went for a touchdown. A lot of those, you go back and watch a lot of those pick sixes. A lot of those pick sixes, even if the quarterback's not getting hit, he's got someone kind of in his face or has had someone in his face where that clock has been sped up. Even if it doesn't directly lead to it, a lot of times that pressure can indirectly lead to it. Speed that clock up, get the ball out of his hands a little quicker, maybe before the receivers had a chance to create some separation. Definitely a concern. Another potential concern, this is a little bit of a strength on strength game. Ohio State has been able to run the ball pretty darn well. They are also passing the ball pretty darn well, but this is a better pass defense than rush defense for Michigan this year. They're top 35 in everything across all 4 categories: rushing yards per attempt, passing yards per attempt, rushing yards allowed per attempt, and passing yards allowed per attempt. But they're kind of low 20s, high 30s in a couple of those. In 3 of those, the one they're in much better shape in, number 7 in the country in yards per pass allowed. That is, they're not absolutely unstoppable. And there's some questions about the context there about how many great passing offenses have they played. But this is also not a Don Brown defense anymore. You no longer know, well, they're going to be manned up and you're going to run a drag route and that guy's going to get open and then he's going to be able to run for 1,000,000 miles. So the traditional Ryan Day game plan to flambe Michigan's pass defense is not necessarily in play as much this year. So you're not necessarily getting those free yards. Things may not come quite as easily for Ohio State in the passing game as they have in the past.
Yeah, and it starts with that pass rush, but that back end of that defense where we've talked about this on the Michigan Monday podcast every week. We watch Michigan every week. Still have some wonderings of what exactly can this defense do if they get attacked down the field. Ohio State can do that. Will they if they just continue to play too deep? Will Ohio State not want to attack that? Will they be okay just running it and throwing it short and staying patient? They have been to this point. Eventually something always breaks free though, and in terms of the deep stuff, and they've got that. But I go back to Michigan starting a true freshman safety, Rod Moore, I believe, right? And when in their nickel look, where is Dax Hill? Is he going to be manned up in the slot against the Jackson Smith and Jigba? You've got Brad Hawkins, who has been around forever, never been outstanding. Is that a guy that they can attack downfield with Chris Olave deep? And there's going to be some double coverage on Olave, I would assume, over the top, things like that. But as long as there's protection, I have confidence that CJ Stroud will find the guy. Is the accuracy there? Are the nerves calmed down by that point? So you look at what Michigan has faced this season in terms of quarterbacks and passing games, and really there's nothing like this on their schedule until now. And I think Ohio State has faced as good or similar pass defenses to Michigan. Michigan hasn't faced anything like this, but still, what Mike McDonald, the defensive coordinator for Michigan, does, he'll change some things up. There's going to be different looks, different fronts, different guys blitzing, never really sure who's coming. And it'll be interesting to watch Ohio State do their shifting to try to find out where the matchups are, who's in man, who's covering who. And I'm also wondering, Tom, is there going to be some tempo to then freeze Michigan's defense on the field, and then you find a matchup that you like and you attack it?
Yeah, Michigan does tend to want to do the same thing. Remember last year, the Sugar Bowl, Brent Venables and Clemson always wanted to be in exactly the perfect look. And so, Ohio State would get set, and then Clemson's guys would stand up and look over and Brent Venables, tell us what to do. And then Ohio State would snap the ball, and then it would be completely lost. You've seen teams do that to Michigan this year. I do wonder if you're going to see tempo from Ohio State. And if you do see tempo from Ohio State, is Michigan still trying to get into the perfect defense, or are they just kind of going like, well, good enough and just figure it out from there? Because sometimes good enough leads to some mismatches. If they're, you remember the Sugar Bowl, doesn't go great if your defense isn't set before the other team snaps the ball. So that is I definitely expect to see some tempo from Ohio State. We'll see how Michigan responds to that. One of the other things that I think is just one of those things to watch is, what does Ohio State do in the red zone? Because Michigan's opponents, 12 of 23, scoring touchdowns in the red zone. That's just 52%. Ohio State is 34 50, 68%. So they basically score 2 out of every 3 times they're in the red zone, they score a touchdown. But you go back through some of those games earlier in the fall, even once they had some stuff sorted out, they were 1 of 3 scoring touchdowns in the red zone at Nebraska. 1 out of 6 scoring touchdowns in the red zone against Penn State. Why does that matter? Well, if they were 3 of 6, if they were just 50%, basically what Michigan's allowing against Penn State, all of a sudden that game's 41-24 instead of 33-24. Looks totally different. 3-score win. Looks like Ohio State cruised, instead 9-point win. So this is something I've talked about on Twitter every once in a while. Ryan Day sometimes gets a little conservative in close games in the past. If you see them kicking field goals, I think, Tony, you've got to get a little bit concerned about Ohio State. Just, this is a game that if you're scoring 7s, you're going to put it away. If you're kicking 3s, this is going to be something that is a losable game.
Yeah, you're looking, so you have 3 scoring drives. You'd really only want one of those to be field goals and the rest to be touchdowns, just so that you don't have so many wasted possessions. And, I don't know, in this game, is a field goal really worth maybe more like 4 points against Michigan's offense than 3 against say Michigan State or Purdue, where there is more offense from those other teams. And but I also, something I mentioned to you a few weeks back or a month or so ago that Ryan Day had admitted maybe 2 weeks ago, Noah Ruggles gives him comfort, and that has maybe made him or more conservative when it comes to going for it on fourth down or kicking it, because it's the idea of the sure three rather than the 4th and 5 from the 26 or whatever that we've seen him take many times in other games. Will he stay aggressive with this one, or will he just, maybe you take it the first time, but then it's like the second time, what are you doing? How are you responding to the game situation? I understand. Go ahead and let's get some points on the board. Even though I think Michigan holding Ohio State to a field goal as the first score, whatever happens, is kind of a win for Michigan, because it's like, just 3 points. What does it matter? That it's almost not quite as good as a punt, but you've held Ohio State out of the end zone. But I think Day also knows, like, every time Michigan keeps them out of the end zone, it's a win for Michigan. 3 points or not. If you're kicking field goals, Michigan's going to take that, because they can give up 2 of those and only need to score 1 touchdown, and they've overtaken the lead. So I'm okay initially with the field goal, because you just want to get the board going. But if we've seen Ohio State kick 3 in 1/2 before, and it's not worked out so well in this game. Same thing with Michigan. Reliance on field goals does not always work out. So, is there coaches study history, but once they get into the present, like, the history kind of goes out the window. It's like, yes, I know in 1996, Ohio State kicked 3 field goals and they shouldn't, but it's different now because I really need these points, just these 3 points. And, if I can just get up 6-0, that's totally different than Ohio State being up 9-0.
Yeah, and you go back to the 2019 Fiesta Bowl. Hey, look at my Fiesta Bowl polo. Yeah, I'm wearing my Fiesta Bowl pullover today. There is a valuable lesson in the Fiesta Bowl, 2019 Fiesta Bowl for Ryan Day. Completely dominated the first half, kicked 3 field goals, only had 16 points, and then all of a sudden you dominate a half, and then Clemson scores right before halftime, and all of a sudden you're going in with not nearly as big a lead as you should, and then you lose the game. You need sevens. You need sevens and not threes. Another thing that is kind of, this is maybe goes a little bit hand in hand with that last one, is Michigan has the opportunity to perhaps control the clock if they can run the ball. If they can, and this is not a big play defense. This is a big play offense, which we have talked about all week as something that is a negative for Michigan, that they don't have home run hitters in the run game, really. They don't really have home run hitters in the passing game, consistent home run hitters. But what that means is, if they're going to score, they're going to do it with extended drives. Now, we've talked about a bunch this week about the fact that that's a negative, because you've got to sustain those drives. But if you do sustain those drives, it's going to take a while, which means you're keeping the Ohio State offense on the sideline. I'm kind of with you. You were talking earlier about the fact that this is not a Michigan State type offense. I don't think I see any way Michigan scores into 40s on Saturday. Maybe they get into low to mid 30s, maybe, if everything goes real well. But if you can limit Ohio State's possessions, coupled with maybe that red zone thing we were just talking about, if Ohio State has 12 possessions and they're scoring on 8 of them, but they're kicking field, or they're scoring on 6 of them, but 3 of them are field goals, well, maybe something in the low 30s wins.
Yeah, and looking at went back and looked at the Nebraska game, just the drive charts, and Ohio State having like 3 possessions a quarter, and Nebraska keeping the ball. And that's really, we talk a lot about the lack of importance of time of possession, but when it comes to just keeping the ball away from Ohio State's offense, that's also like game control and things like that. When you're just, if Ohio State's not on the field, if the offense is not on the field, you're winning, you're having some winning plays. And we know Hassan Haskins, not an explosive guy, gets 4 or 5 yards a carry, between 3 and 5, 3 and 6 yards a carry on any given play. And you do that a couple of times, and now you've got a 3rd and short. And if Ohio State controls those 3rd downs, stops those 3rd downs, now you're talking about having a couple of extra possessions. And 2 or 3 extra possessions for Ohio State over the course of a game could be 2 or 3 extra touchdowns. That could turn a 7-point game into a 28-point game over the course of all 60 minutes. And you go from 12 possessions to 15 possessions against a tired Michigan defense down the stretch. So I think they will try to control as much of the clock as possible. I don't know that they're going to be like running it down to 2 or 3 seconds, but I also don't think they're going to be hurrying to the line. They may go no huddle just to make sure if they're not going to substitute, they're not going to let Ohio State substitute. But I think, yeah, it's Michigan's offense is what it is at this point. Run the ball, throw short, try to pick up first downs. And like we saw the Donovan Edwards thing with throwing to the running backs. That may continue, but really, I don't see Michigan all of a sudden being like, you know what, let's go attack Lathan Ransom, let's go attack Bryson Shaw, let's get after these Ohio State safeties. That's not what Cade McNamara is. That's not what this Michigan offense has been. So I think Ohio State understands they will see some wrinkles, but it's going to be these three tight ends over here now. And now we're going to throw a sixth offensive lineman in, and we're going to throw a throwback screen to Eric All or something like that. They know the pieces. It's just they might try to use them a little bit differently, but I don't think it's going to be down the field.
Yeah, they have not. That has not really been a part of their game much at all this year. It feels like they do it every once in a while just because they feel like we have to do it. We're contractually obligated to do this at least once a half, so we're going to do it, but we don't have to like it. That's just kind of how it's been for Michigan's offense a lot this year. But if they can be methodical, if they can run the ball well enough, stay on schedule, keep those chains moving, that is definitely a path to victory for them. Last thing I wanted to talk about is something that we've talked about a lot of elements of this game. We have not spent a lot of times on special teams, though. Michigan blocked a punt last week. They had the throwback on the kickoff return for a touchdown. They're number 2 in the nation in SP plus in special teams. Ohio State is number 1. But, Jake Moody has been very, very good, 22-24. He is a Groza Award finalist, as is Ohio State's kicker Noah Ruggles. But, Ohio State has had a special teams advantage pretty much every week this year. They don't necessarily have that this week. And Michigan has been able to make some big plays on special teams. That's something that we have seen special teams swing this game in the past. Desmond Howard, Ted Ginn, Charles Woodson. I mean, you know these names. Is that, that seems like something that could swing, if it's a close game, could swing the game this weekend as well.
Yeah, I think if Michigan has an advantage in this game, it's on special teams. And I don't know that it's a huge advantage, but they're very solid, scored on offense, defense, and special teams in the last game for the first time since 2015. They punt the ball well. They're keeping it out of the end zone as well. They don't allow returns. Ohio State has allowed 5 punt returns this year. That's the lowest in the Big Ten. Michigan has allowed 6. So you can't really take advantage of them in the kicking game. Ohio State may get Emeka Egbuka back this week. He's the leading kickoff returner in the Big Ten. It may not matter, though, because really Michigan can put the ball in the end zone for touchbacks consistently with Jake Moody, and he's really good. And so they do have some dangerous guys returning the ball. AJ Henning can do some punt return things. I don't know if Blake Corum will be back, and he's kind of diminished his role on special teams even before he was hurt. But they've got some guys. They cover it well. We know they can get after it. Time to go back to the old standard. If you block a punt, you've got a 90% chance of winning that game, and that's not even returning it for a touchdown. That's just blocking it, just because of the momentum and everything that goes with it. So they're going to come after it. We saw what Chris Olave did in 2018. Like, it can change a game.
Mm-hmm.
It's a way to change it quickly, and it doesn't require a huge talent advantage. It doesn't require a 6-minute drive. It just requires getting by one guy, sliding through at the right time, getting your hands in the right place. And it doesn't guarantee you a win, but the math is there. I don't know why it's so high, but it's there.
Yeah, and you have seen, good big special teams plays that did work out. And remember the 2016 game where there was a fake punt that didn't work out real well. I mean, you have seen special teams have an impact in these games a bunch.
Demario McCall a couple years ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Demario McCall muffing a kickoff return that handed Michigan 7 points right before halftime in that 2018 game.
Jordan Hall, the last kickoff return for Ohio State that went for a score.
Yep, 2010. Yeah, that was another big one. My favorite special teams note of the week comes from the official Michigan website, where their special team stats list 2 place kickers this year. Jake Moody 12 of 12 on field goals, long of 39. Jacob Moody, 10 of 12 on field goals, long of 52. I think it's the same person, but if Jake Moody's evil twin Jacob shows up, bigger leg, not quite as accurate. Definitely something to watch on Saturday. Tony, thank you as always for joining me. I thought this was an important conversation to have because I feel like we've spent a lot of this week talking about why we think Ohio State's going to win. Feels like we got to sort of acknowledge a lot. Hey, there is another side of this. Michigan is still a pretty good team. I think Ohio State's a better team. Michigan is a very good team this week. If, this is just sort of the stuff to watch for. If you're getting a little nervous on Saturday, if you start seeing this stuff, okay, you can get a little nervous. But Tony, thank you for joining me. Well, make sure you check out all of the, if you have not had quite enough of Tony and I this week, we have done, 52 hours of Buckeye Weekly podcasts this week. We've had a few other guests on the Morning Scoop this week. Lots and lots of content. If you've not already drowned yourself in Ohio State, Michigan content, and you're looking for a little more, you can find all of that on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. You can search Buckeye Weekly or search Morning Scoop. Had Alex Gleitman did a great Around the Oval episode this week. Kevin Noon will have a Big Me kickoff episode. All of that stuff is all free, all on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. And if you're on YouTube, it's all on this YouTube channel, youtube.com/Buckeye Scoop. Tony and I will be back a little later on today to do our Friday live show. Then we'll be back on Saturday morning to do our live pregame show. And then we'll be back on Tony, pick your head up. It's not so bad. We're almost through Michigan week. We're almost there. And then after the game, we'll have our live post-game show as well, our instant reaction episode for Buckeye Weekly immediately after the game. So that'll do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.